hiring somebody for the first time, how am I covering that person's annual salary? And so was that some of the fears that you had in hiring your first person?
I was naive enough to not really think a lot of those things through to the degree that I probably should have.
No, that's good.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. That's our motto here, taking action.
Yeah.
Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Taking Action. I am your host, Michael Allen. Today, I'm joined with my co-host, Ryan Peaton, as well as our guest, Krystal Hobbs. Krystal is the owner of Reflective Marketing, as well as the host of Beyond the Tools podcast. Krystal, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thanks for showing. And thanks for coming in. I'm super excited about this, having you here today, as you can tell, and as we talked about before the cameras turned on. So, Krystal, I just want to dive right in.
Let's do it.
To the start. Anybody who doesn't know, after Michael's introduction, we've known each other for a long time now, over a decade, which I think is a milestone.
Yeah.
And back when I first met you, I was starting my business. You were starting your business. So, like I kind of mentioned earlier, I want to go right back to the beginning because I want to, I don't want to miss anything. And I think that your experience and what you've done with your business over the past decade plus is going to be of extreme value to everybody listening to this podcast.
And before we get into it, can you tell us a little bit about your background and what it is that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I specialize in using Facebook ads as a lead generation tool, primarily for clients that work in the trades. And my background, I guess I did a Bachelor of Commerce at MUN, did a focus in marketing, worked mostly social media marketing roles up until the point that I started Reflective.
Interesting. And that's where you bumped into this guy, was when you were at MUN.
Yeah. So I did.
Hang on now. No, not at MUN. I think you were in the year behind me.
Yeah.
So when you were on a work term, I was in class, and then vice versa.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah.
It could have been a few years, which makes me older.
There was definitely a gap, I guess, in my mind. I was in MUN at the time that I was working at Clear Risk, and that's when you would come back or
yeah. So I had been gone already 4 years. You were still in MUN, so
yeah,
I'm old.
Only a little bit old.
Yeah. Well, anyway, sorry, I interrupted.
No, that's good. We got a little bit of the background out of the way. What did you want to dive right into?
Yeah. So I want to go back to the obstacles because when we were working for the same employer at the time, and that's about the time that you were moving into Reflective. And one of the things that we always talk about on this podcast is the obstacle and the red tape that people find leaving their employment and moving into a self-employment or an entrepreneurial position that they really want to, but they don't know how to make that transition.
So how did I
get started? Yeah, I should finish the question.
No, it's okay. It's good.
So how did you do it?
So I think for me, I always thought that I would start a business when I was much older and had a lot more experience. So I had just graduated with my business degree. I had an internship at General Motors in their advertising department. And through that, I worked with 5 different agencies. And I always thought it would be way cooler to be on the other side of the table because they got to come up with all the ideas and the strategy, and it was fast paced and all this stuff. So when my internship finished, I had the option to apply for a job with GM, or I could do something different. And ultimately, I wanted to come home and work for an agency. So,
come home? So it wasn't here in Newfoundland?
No, so that was in Oshawa in Ontario.
Oh, okay.
So it was just that summer. I did the internship. Cool, love agency life. Let's try that. Came home, worked for an agency for about 8 months. And then I came into work one day after just signing a mortgage, just got a new car. Like, life was good. And the owner was like, this isn't for me. I'm going to close down the business. But if the clients are interested, like, you can take whoever you want and start up on your own.
Oh, so, nice. Well, opportunity, but also scary.
Yeah. So I had envisioned, again, waiting till I got, more of a career and expertise going.
We always have the ideal situation in our minds framed out, and that's never how it goes.
Yeah. And my dad, who's a lifelong entrepreneur, Brandon, who my current husband, then boyfriend, was like, why don't you just go for it? And I was like, okay, I'll do it for a month and we'll see how it goes. I'll be a freelancer. And month turned into a year and now turned into 10. So that's where we're at.
Wow.
Okay, so for you, in other words, it kind of, the opportunity was there. You kind of got pushed a little bit into it.
Yes.
So I guess, that helps the situation.
It really does help. I recommend losing your job to start a business.
Get fired.
Did you take many of the clients with you when you started?
I took a few. I think I had 3 from that agency. Now, I didn't keep them all.
Yeah.
But, I started with
Well, that kind of brings me into my next part because as we kind of just chatted about earlier, there's a bunch of firsts. And making the leap from an employment position or whatever your current position is into that entrepreneurial position or running your own business, making that transition. And one of the hardest things about doing that is, where's my first client going to come from? So you were kind of like, here you go.
That's lovely.
That is ideal.
Yeah.
I mean, not that you couldn't do it anyway. I'm not trying to downplay it, but like, what a great opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with that, I inherited both the good and the bad. So it was awesome to have a start and I didn't have to, worry right away. But some had, like a huge scope of work for very little pay. And then others were just like not really a good fit for my long-term expertise. There were all sorts of different challenges. And I remember specifically, I think I started the business like, I don't know, let's say March 1st. And then my birthday, which is at the end of April, I remember like working till like 9 p.m. and I was just like so cranky. This was truly the highs and lows.
I want to just take a little sidestep there because you said something that I was like, wait. I find that from my experience anyway, and I've never worked at a marketing agency, even though I did marketing with my business degree as well. But what you said was there was a client there with a huge scope of work with not enough pay. And that is just something I just want to unpack a little bit, talk about, and we'll get back on path about when you're offering a service, which I find if you're selling a good, it can be more of a straightforward business model. It's like this product costs this much. You can do analysis of what it costs to develop it or make it, blah, blah, blah. And then you can sell that and you can kind of quantify it easier. I do think that it's harder to quantify a service. And a lot of people fall into the trap of quantifying the service by quantifying the time it takes to provide the service, and maybe less so the value the service provides to the client. So am I on the right track with that and how it works in your business? And if you can just talk a little bit about what you just said about having a scope of work that you need to provide for a client that's too big with a number that's too small next to it.
So with that particular scenario, I think I was doing multiple social media posts a week plus an email newsletter, and they were paying me $250 a month.
Oh.
And when I fired that client, Brandon, my partner, was like, "Are you crazy?" Like, because it was
Did you at least ask him for more money first? Or
I think I
find
did.
it right?
I think I did pitch what it should have been priced at, or at least an increase, and they didn't take it. And then I was like, "Yeah, this is not going to work out." But I remember Brandon being like, "Are you crazy? Like, you're throwing away whatever that is per year." And like we look back at that all the time and laugh about like, now I'll lose a client that's like, I don't know, $30,000, $40,000 a year, and you're like, well, another one's gonna come along, and that's just part of the game,
Absolutely.
Talk about a like a life lesson in business and how your perspectives change over the year.
Yeah.
Because when you're starting out, every dollar seems so valuable.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to realize that you're better off without certain clients, without certain money, because it frees up your time for more, but it's another scary transition.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so how do you quantify, or how do you? And maybe I'll leave it up to you to tell me how much you want to get into it. But how do you quantify? How do you put a value in a price to your services when your service is so intangible?
I think with time, pricing got a lot easier. In the beginning,
Sure.
I would pretty much set a price, and if I got a little hesitation, but they still went forward with it, I knew I was in a good range.
Yeah.
So it was really kind of trial and error. Now we do track our time, and I also just have more general guidelines of like what the end value is to that client, what the specific scope of work is, if they increase their ad spend to over a certain threshold, for example. I know that takes our team a lot more time and effort to be able to maintain their results, so we'll charge for that accordingly. So there's a few different models there, but yeah, in the beginning it was more trial and error, figuring out like what that threshold was for people, where I always wanted to be expensive. Like I never wanted somebody to be like, I knew that if somebody said like, oh, that's cheaper, that's affordable, that I was like way off base.
Yeah.
All right. It reminds me of your approach to business as well.
Yeah.
I mean, you taught me a long time ago that your approach was to go for less work but higher budget clients, as opposed to doing more work and earning less per client.
Well, I just found that you could have, I'll just pick numbers. You could have a $10,000 job. For me, in the contracting world, you could have a $10,000 client and a $100,000 client, and from the management side of managing that project, you put in relatively the same amount of time. And it's really hard to generate a profit to take care of the overhead in the company with smaller margin jobs. And especially when your company grows, you have more people, you have to have a certain margin to just survive. But yeah, no, it's funny because I agree with you completely. When you're providing top-notch service and you're putting your best and you're going the extra mile on a few things, you don't want to be the cheapest. If you're the cheapest, that just comes with a pile more headaches. But then you have to deliver.
So you mentioned you specialize with people working in the trades. So if someone's working in the trades, I imagine they have to be earning a certain amount per year to really be your client, or is that inaccurate? Can you take on self-employed individuals who might be earning less than people who are incorporated?
Yeah, so over the years, we've really found our sweet spot, I would say, in terms of company size. And it's not really that, someone needs to make a certain level of income to be able to afford us necessarily. It's more so the infrastructure that they have in place. So with the volume of leads and appointments that we typically drive for our clients, if they don't have somebody in the office picking up the phone, if they don't have a dedicated salesperson and the owner's trying to wear both those hats, it's chaos. It's absolute chaos. It's stressful for them. They're not getting the return that they expect. We're now, being sales coach and therapist and office manager and the works, and it's just really hard to do that. So certainly on a case-by-case basis, we will take on clients that are like in that growth stage. But for the most part, we really require somebody that has someone in the office and has a salesperson in order for us to really be able to deliver.
They need to be able to manage those leads that you're sending them. So, I mean, is there...
So what Krystal's saying is, I can't afford her.
Case-by-case basis.
That's right. Customized service. That's for you. So how would one quantify the return on investment? So say they come to you as someone who wants to market their electrical business, for example.
Yeah.
How do they know what they're getting for their dollar?
So we are huge on tracking. With all of our clients, we give them a basic CRM so they can see where their leads are in the sales process. And it is up to them to manage updating those leads. So yes, I had an in-home visit with this person. Yes, I sent a quote. Yes, it's sold. Here's the value. And we actually meet with our clients in the first 3 months that we're working with a new client. We meet with them every 2 weeks to review all the leads in their pipeline and make sure that they're hitting their goals. And if not, then we're looking at, okay, where's that gap in the process? Because you should be converting at least 20% of your leads to appointments. And then you should get at least 40% of those through to a sale. So if you're not hitting those benchmarks, we know that there's a problem there, and that's what we can dig into.
Right. Absolutely.
That's pretty valuable too. You know exactly the numbers you have to produce, so that what it translates to. So how much is going into the top of the funnel in the sales pipeline, and how much is coming at the bottom. You know what that should look like, and when it doesn't happen, you can say, "Hey, there's something wrong. What's going on?"
Yeah.
And so then, is it part of the service to help analyze that and find where the problem is in the pipe and where the snag is too?
Mostly, yes. I mean, there's obviously a certain responsibility that the client bears in it as well. But we do give them all the tools to be able to do that. So the system that we give them to be able to track their leads, they can make all their calls from there, and then all the calls are recorded. Like there's a track record of everything if they use all the tools that we give them. So then it's a lot easier to dig into.
It sounds so organized.
What's the software you're using for the leads? The CRM?
So it's our own CRM, basically.
You made a CRM?
So we use a platform. It's kind of like building a website on WordPress. So we built our own CRM that we give to our clients. We call it the reflective CRM.
Right, like a white label product.
Yeah,
that you rebrand.
exactly. Yeah.
Gotcha. Interesting, because I have a tech background, a software developer, and moving into cybersecurity more and more. Yeah, so it's interesting to know what tools you're using to track these leads. So it sounds like this is a little bit of B2C sales and B2B sales. Do you specialize in either business to business or business to consumer?
So for us, our primary client are residential HVAC contractors. So they are, doing heat pumps, air conditioners, furnaces in customers' homes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so your customers are your company's B2B, but you're helping your customer do B2C.
You got it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. I just want to. So we talked a little bit about the growth and how you got started. I want to talk more about the actual growth of hiring employees now. I don't think we touched on that yet.
No.
Because we covered how you got started, how you got your first sales, how you transitioned into some of the beginning stages. Mm-hmm. Next, I want to talk about, because this is a huge step. It was a huge step for me in my company. And I kind of just try to get out of the way right from the beginning. And that step is hiring somebody for the first time, going, oh, okay, I need help. And what went through my mind is, how am I covering that person's annual salary? Mm-hmm. How am I going to make sure I have enough work and enough cash flow coming in? Forget about everything else, just to pay for that person. So was that some of the fears that you had in hiring your first person? And how did you manage that? How did you get over that and get it done?
I think when I started, I had a certain level of I was naive enough to not really think a lot of those things through to the degree that I probably should have.
No, that's good.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. That's our motto here, taking action.
Yeah.
Just do it.
So, I knew when I started Reflective that I didn't want to work alone. I had no interest in being like a solopreneur. It was like, how quickly can I get to a place that I can hire people and that I can have a team, because I don't want to do all these things myself. Mm-hmm. So, similarly, I hired pretty early. It might have only been like 6 to 8 months in. It was pretty quick.
Wow.
But I knew what was available to me. So I got a wage subsidy program for my first hire, which did hedge a lot of the risk there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I hired someone that I worked with in university. I knew very, very well. I had a great background in digital marketing, and I knew that we meshed really well. So It made that first hire really easy.
Okay, so you mitigated some of the risk here.
Yeah.
You had some of your salary taken away from subsidies, which is a really great point, actually, because that's one thing I didn't avail of early on when I should have, and it would have made things so much easier. So when you're hiring somebody, check to see if there's subsidies available. Obviously. Sounds so obvious now. I didn't do it. I'll tell later. And I'm like, why wasn't I doing this?
Yeah.
So one thing that went through my mind, I think I might have just touched on it earlier, is, okay, if I hire this person, I have to pay them X amount a year, which means I can't pay that to me, which means I had to go get X number of work to get this. But you said you knew what was available. That was with the subsidies. Did you have an idea of where you're going or the prospects you had lined up to make this jump, or were you just kind of like, I'll get the work, I'll get the sales?
I think I was like, I'll get the work, I'll figure it out.
Yeah. Oh, that's kind of badass.
Or dumb, either or, but it worked out.
No, take the compliment on that one.
Yeah.
So, but now you have more than just one employee. I don't even know how many you have right now.
Yeah, so there's 4 of us now, so we're still a pretty lean team, but it's, I think it works. I think it's really easy to get bloated with too many team members, and you do always have to think about, am I protecting the business? Am I making sure that there's enough profit there, that this is something that I need for the long term, and not just like, this is a busy period that I got to ride out.
Mm-hmm. And what roles did you hire for? And what was the first role you hired for versus the 4 that you have on now?
I call it like family view, like, good question.
The very first role that I hired for was a social media specialist. I think that was the title, or digital marketing specialist, either or.
Yeah.
But it was essentially someone to both execute the client work and also meet with clients. Now, being a team of 2, I went to every client meeting, and I was pretty involved as well. But again, I had this very talented, proficient person that I trusted, so that worked really, really well. We were kind of a dynamic duo for a long time there.
Yeah.
Beyond that, so for a long time, I did social media management as our primary service. So I continuously just hired for that role. But over the years, we shifted more and more into advertising. And we've kind of, grown and shrunk again. So it's hard to say what came next, but now there's always someone that is client facing, and we've split up who talks to the client and who does the work, because it's hard to find someone who is skilled at doing both.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
Now those are 2 separated things.
Social media marketing is really a skill and a specialization in itself, and something that I think about more and more, that I need somebody who's just doing that all the time. That's a dedicated role that you need to have hired for. But I'd like to talk a little bit broader on your understanding. Maybe we'll niche it first, and we'll talk about your approach to social media marketing and what you do for somebody when they come to you, because they say, look, I'm giving this person thousands of dollars. What is it that they're actually doing for me? And then I'd like to talk just more generally about marketing in general. And to kind of add a little bit more filler information, I heard this beautiful description of what marketing is a while ago, and it dove into all the niches of what is propaganda and what is advertising and what is direct to consumer sales. They really broke down every umbrella term, and then they kind of encompassed it all with marketing in general. But I'll try and think a little bit more on the specializations, because they went into like publications and they really described what everything is. And when it finally all came together at the end, it was like, this is what marketing is. Somebody who plans every aspect of the step along the way. But let's take a little step back. And so what's your approach to social media marketing, and what does somebody get when they hire you?
So our services have evolved over the years. So it used to be, especially 10 years ago, it was much more important to have like posts every day on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and all that sort of thing. Now what we do, I think, is even more specific. So we're focused on using paid social media advertising as a way to proactively get in front of your audience, get them to raise their hand and say, yes, I'm interested. Here's my contact information. So it's really much more focused on paying to generate leads as opposed to trying to post the most engaging, fun content that maybe get a comment on, maybe get a DM, but it's a bit of a game.
Right. Interesting.
So, I'm just curious, with the content itself, where do you get the content from? Like, do you help your clients like take photos, take video, do scripts, do like commercials? I guess like sort of like a TV commercial is what comes to my mind because I'm dating myself. But yeah, do you help your clients through the process of generating that content to create the advertisements that you put out there?
The content that we use is a bit of a mix. So we always ask our clients, like, send us any photos, videos, whatever you have as our base content. We will use stock in some cases, more so to like create graphics or that sort of thing. We've hired actors to do videos and we've used those. Sometimes we give clients a script and we're like, okay, go record this and send it back to us and we'll edit it and make it snazzy. Yeah. So it's really a whole jumble of things. But because we have so many clients in so many different markets that are all in the same industry, we know what works and we can game that a little. We can, duplicate that across markets. And in some cases we have like proven creative that we've used across many clients in many different markets so that this is a base of stuff that we know works every single time.
Mm-hmm. Don't you love it when you have a template?
Oh, yes.
That's proven to work?
Yeah.
And you can just kind of like take a new client. I mean, you've worked for that, so you make it look easy. It's kind of like athletes. When they do something, you're like, yeah, I could easily run that 100 meters in 10 seconds too. No, you can't. But it's the experience. So through the experience, you've developed a template, you have the formula, you know what works. So you can efficiently, what it sounds like to me, take a new client, bring in their brand, their logo, their content, or whatever, plug it into your formula, and it comes great, beautiful results.
Yeah. And
cool.
I resisted niching down for so long. Like, being entrepreneurs, we love the variety. I love learning new things. Like, I was all about that.
Yes.
But it was really hard to be like, okay, I have one client who's in risk management software. I have another client who's a dating coach. I work with a bakery, consulting, real estate, car sales. Like, that's a lot. And especially if you're trying to grow a team and teach them how to do all these different things, like, it's impossible. So I started out really, really broad in terms of like digital marketing for local businesses. And now I'm like, we do lead generation Facebook advertising for HVAC and other contractors.
But you know what? I have to just say, I relate to that completely. Because when I first started, if anybody called me to do anything, to build anything, interior, exterior, whatever renovations, I would jump on it and I would do it. And it was exhausting because I could never really carve out that template, that formula that you're talking about. And now I turn away people left, right, and center, and I only take what I know I'm good at.
Yeah.
And it was like,
Yeah.
You know, it's less fun, it's less challenging. But I don't know how to grow a business being such a potentially bespoke type of operation where everything you do is so unique and individualized from the next thing you do. Like, it's all so different. That's so hard and so time consuming.
Yeah.
And would make you'd have to price it so high because you had to rebuild everything every time. Mm-hmm. So yeah, creating the formula, and Michael and I have touched on this too in many of our conversations over the years.
Yeah.
That it's having that system in place can really help grow your business, grow the revenue, and then you get really efficient at it.
Yes. I've also found that yeah, not only is it more efficient for the team and it gets a better result for the client, but we can also go a lot deeper because now I can benchmark. I know what works across the board. I have all these insights from all these different companies that now it's way easier to be like, this is the gap in what you're doing. And I can look through your numbers and see where things are growing.
So if this is clearly the right thing to do for growth and benchmarking and all the benefits that we're talking about, why do we resist so hard? As entrepreneurs, why do we resist it so hard? Why do we want to run after? And I find this in the contracting world. Everybody's so afraid of losing a sale that they're going after everything. They're casting this massive net, trying to just catch whatever they can, even if they're established. It's like a habit you just kind of can't break sometimes.
Yeah. I think it's scarcity. I think it's also fear of boredom and being cookie cutter and, you know.
So do you take on clients outside of the HVAC world within trades?
Very limited. So we have a number of clients in home building. Pretty well anyone who touches a home we've worked with in some capacity. So again, you know, if it's the right fit, we will take it on, but 85% of our client base now is HVAC companies.
So you could say X amount of dollars will bring you X amount of leads specifically within HVAC, because you've got that boiled down now to a science. And I don't think you've ever looked at marketing. I think you've always said like word of mouth or my clients refer me and that's how I get all my business. Maybe
I hired Krystal in 2016.
What?
But I was outside of her niche, and she didn't know it, and I didn't know it. But I wasn't paying her enough, and it was too hard. I wasn't too small. This is back when I think you were still trying to get your niche, and it turns out I wasn't it. My business wasn't it for it wasn't right for Reflective. And I don't think that's a negative thing. I think that's just kind of is what it is.
Interesting too, but there must be a way that instead of bringing Ryan a bunch of leads that he has to track down, you could probably even fine tune it so you just get leads that are in his ballpark as well. I mean, you must be able to fine tune things.
The other thing, before you answer Krystal, if you don't mind, is with Krystal's HVAC, and correct me if I say anything wrong, because you are the expert here, not me. But with Krystal's leads in the HVAC industry, they go through so many leads. They have so many hundreds, maybe even thousands of clients per year, depending on the size of the company. With my business, I might have a niche, but the job size is still relatively large. I might only have 12 clients a year. You know, maybe more, because there's always a few small jobs, but relatively, you know, averaging 12, 16 clients a year. It's just I don't need that many leads.
Right.
And if Krystal did her thing and provided my company with 100 leads, I'd be like, what do I do with this?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You'd almost the opposite. Instead of you bringing you 100 leads, bring you 10 really high budget leads that you can manage without your full-time salesperson.
Yeah, so how would that work?
Yeah. I think we can schedule a consultation there. But yeah, no, absolutely right. And that's why one of the reasons why we focus on HVAC is because they do need volume, and the sales cycle is short relative to companies that are doing renovations or home building. I have a home building client that worked with us for maybe 2-3 months, sold the homes he wanted to, and then he went away. And he just came back last month, and we worked together again. He sold what he had, and now he's pausing again. But it's not because we're doing a bad job. It's like, that's just all he has.
That's a cycle. That's, you know, and you don't necessarily have to. I find that sometimes just let me know if you agree with me or not, that we can over focus on growth sometimes. I'm kind of good with where my business is too. People keep saying, Ryan, you should get into home building. I don't really want to be honest.
Yeah.
Like I'm okay, and now that I've kind of got my formula and what I'm doing, and I can provide really good service, and I know exactly what I'm doing, and I've got lots of experience in my niche, I can do other things. I can keep that going and keep it going really well, and then do other things rather than just the same, which is keeping me not bored.
Yeah. Right, like the co-working space.
Yeah, the co-working space. which I'm holding the spot for reflective marketing, by the way.
Can't wait. Sign me up for my tour.
Yeah, it's not
How's
much
it coming along?
yet. It's okay. It's we're gonna finally see some drywall happening.
That's exciting.
Where am I? Maybe by the end of this week, we might start putting on some drywall. It's been a long road. It has been a slow, because we're not just renovating a space.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how to build a co-working space, build a business. What are the requirements? And the infrastructural requirements.
Yeah.
And the second I put drywall on, I know that I'm like, gotta think of something. I'm like, ooh, I should have ran this wire for this speaker, or this camera, or this monitor, or this data cable, or some kind of a switch.
Yeah, just have plugs everywhere. Get Jason to go to town with the plugs.
Oh, there's gonna be plugs everywhere. Awesome, lots of plugs.
He loves plugs.
And awesome internet. That's. I think that's the basic success for a co-working space.
Yeah. Everything is wireless nowadays. Don't worry about those wires. Everything is beautiful quality.
Some are, and there's accessibility of the space. There's a lot of factors, and I've never worked in it before, so I'm trying to make sure that you get it. You get it right.
Absolutely.
It's stressful.
Let's chat a little bit more broadly about marketing in general. And I wish I had this description of marketing as a umbrella term fresh in my mind, but I don't. But what approaches do you use, or is it strictly social media marketing? And even if that's strictly what you do, can you chat a little bit about your thoughts on other types of marketing?
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly try.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of ties into a question I had, so I'll just throw it out there. It goes together, and that's how you ended up focusing. Because he's asking about different types of marketing, and I was going to ask about why have you carved out a niche with Facebook, and do you only do Facebook, or are there others? So I think those kind of tie together.
Yeah, so I have been finding, I guess, over the last few years in particular, agencies as a whole are getting more specialized. I think it's really hard to find a company that can do your brand and do your website and do your photography and do your social media content and your SEO and your Google Ads. Like, there's just so much that really, I think the best possible thing that marketing agencies can do and that contractors can do is to hire people that are specialized in those areas. And I think it's getting increasingly difficult to be able to do all of those things.
That's almost a lot for an entrepreneur to manage just in himself, is the amount of media and marketing specialists they'll need. It would be so nice to have this one company to do everything, but then of course the budget is going to increase.
Yeah.
So if someone was new and small and they wanted to start marketing, like Ryan, for example, even though he's not new, and he's not technically small, but he hasn't marketed other than word of mouth and referrals from his satisfied clients, would you suggest social media as a good go-to, or is there something else that comes to mind?
So generally, it depends on who it is that you're trying to attract, and then what budget or resources do you have to be able to do that. So a lot of times, like when I am talking to someone, it's like they got one truck on the road kind of deal. They're at a smaller stage. Usually where I suggest that they start is with Google. So local service ads are really popular, and it's something that you're just paying for the leads that are actually generated. So that's a good place to start. Social media content, of course, is more about having a presence and attention and really building up your brand. And I think that's where having great video and photography and showing your day-to-day is really important. That, you know, it's a real company, it's a reputable company, and here are all the people behind it. Email marketing, I think, is like the most underrated tool ever. People forget about it.
Really? Yeah, and people do forget that, it's self-included.
Yeah.
Because I feel like email marketing is kind of like old school.
Yeah, I hate getting emails. I unsubscribe to shit all the time.
But you're saying it's really effective.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Even with the rise in, oh my God, the term is escaping me, spam and scamming emails.
So obviously there are things you can put in place to make sure that you're protecting your domain and that your email list is clean and all those sorts of things. But yeah, if email has one of the highest returns on investment, and especially if you are doing a good job of keeping a database of past customers, leads, like these are people that have already worked with you or have expressed interest and gotten so far down the sales funnel. These are going to be the people that are easiest to convert. So I think a lot of times
I'm kind of like, why have I not been doing this? Yeah, I completely, sorry. Yeah, I just couldn't hold that in. I'm just thinking, yeah, there's a lot of people that we get so far down the sales pipeline and for whatever reason they go cold. And if we had some, like a marketing campaign, like an email out campaign, just where it's kind of an impersonal touch point to just kind of like hit a spark, see if the fire lights back up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it wouldn't cost you much, especially if you used AI nowadays to help automate that email.
Yeah. So for all of our clients, at the very least, when a new lead comes in, we have a series of automated emails set up to go out over a period of a week or two so that there are multiple touch points, and we mimic that with text messages as well. And then one of the easiest ways to drum up new sales, of course, is to go back. Anybody who's been a lead within the last, 60 to 90 days, just sending a quick re-engagement email like, hey, we talked about this kitchen renovation. Is that still a priority for you, or have you decided not to move on that, or whatever?
Yeah. I'm always so impressed with Krystal's way with words. I'm like, I can't quite get it. And she's like, just say this. I'm like, how did you do that?
That's the marketing expert in there.
Yeah, but you know what? I feel like when people come to me sometimes and they're like, I can't figure out how to say it. I'm like, well, you just say this. Maybe it's also a little bit of like a second set of eyes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just a fresh perspective.
That happened on our first episode. I was like, how am I going to introduce this show? I don't want to box it in too much. And you were like, just say this. And you riddled it off. And I was like, what did you even say? I was like, it was great. But I don't remember anything of what you just said.
And then I couldn't say it again.
The magic of the moment.
Yeah,
that's all it was.
So I see marketing in some ways as a bit of this dark hole that you can kind of just invest a lot of money in and not really see, especially if you don't know much about how to market. But I want to chat a little bit about, well, one, knowing a budget is super important, but two, and this is kind of a side question, but you mentioned just having a presence on social media is so important. Is that type of content really successful, like posting every day and making your life about your business? How much following does that actually create?
I think it's really hard to put a dollar amount on a personal brand, but if you are posting regularly and giving value, whether that's entertaining people or teaching them something new or simply showing that you're a real human person, that is what's going to attract people to you and really take it from, I could hire any company, but I really like this Mike guy. I'm going to give him a call. So that is really where the power is. The hard part of that is, of course, that it takes so much time and resources.
Right.
So it doesn't have to, but it does.
Right.
And I think that's where, when you're in an earlier stage of business where you probably have more time, it makes sense to invest more there. When you're at a later stage in business where you probably have more money than you do time, you're better off doing advertising because you're not having to put in all this effort on creating new all the time.
Right.
You can have a few key assets that you use and figure out a system that you can just rinse and repeat anytime you need new business.
Cool. It's so hard to find that return on investment for creating the content yourself and using your time versus how many followers you get. It's really, it feels like you're just shooting in the dark when you're doing that, right? You're just kind of shotgunning things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
she's like, yeah, that's right.
That's what you're doing.
That's what it is.
It's entirely what you're doing. So people who are in that stage right now, what's something that you could suggest to them?
that are in the stage that they're just kind of shooting in the dark and wondering.
Yeah,
what
they're
works.
trying to scale. They're focused on scaling, and they're in that point where they're just creating their content themselves. They got
Yeah,
more time.
yeah.
They're not earning much revenue yet.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I find really effective is to take note of the questions that your customers ask you and turn that into content, and specifically video content. Of course, if we see human face, real person, that's going to have a lot more impact than, a graphic or a written post. So the video is important, but then also taking customer questions or conversations that you're having with customers on a day-to-day basis. If they're thinking it and they're asking it, then your potential customers are going to be thinking that as well. So it's a way that you can show up that's authentic and helpful and engaging, and that's much more likely to have a good return and to actually get some attention than it is to do whatever else you're doing there.
Yeah, it's it feels like it's a catch-22 where somebody who's busy and they're either being an entrepreneur, they're trying to become an entrepreneur, and their time is limited. If they really want to double down on that type of marketing, you really kind of have to make it your life. But the struggle with that is then you're stuck in the self-employment world, right?
Yeah.
Where you want to remove yourself and create those business systems. I feel like I'm struggling with that right now. That's a pain point in growing a media company.
Yeah.
Is how much time and how much do I really want to be in the public eye?
Yeah. It's a good question.
But I've seen some posts that you've done where you're trying to engage directly with your clients, and I like that. There is something that's valuable about putting your face behind what it is you're doing as opposed to just a generic background.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is building the habit of doing it on a regular basis. And don't get me wrong, I go through phases. Sometimes I'm really into it, and then things get crazy and it dies off. But I think if you can build up that habit of doing it regularly and also having fun with it, I find the more that I just have fun with it and, play around with like reels on Instagram and like trending audio and like all that silly stuff that just allows me to be like playful and creative, then that makes it a lot easier to keep up on content because it's not a chore. It's like, I'm just messing around. I'm having fun.
I find I could never, and I still haven't ever gotten into, I forget about it.
Yeah.
I'll just rephrase that and start with, I just forget about it. When my day starts and things start coming at me, my phone starts ringing, the emails start coming, and I have my list of things I have to do. Things just happen. And then I go, oh, the day's over.
Yeah.
And it's gone. And I'm like, ooh, I said I was going to make some Instagram reels. Oh, I said I was going to make a little video on a job site today. Oh, I thought I was going to make a post today. I was going to do this. I have the best of intentions. But then it never happens.
Yeah.
I can't seem to fit it in. I always forget.
Yeah, and in those cases, I think it really helps to have some sort of accountability, even in an informal way. Like I have friends in business that I'm like, we both have to create content, so we'll brainstorm ideas and then do it together as like a fun activity, because that's one of the ways you can get it done. Or scheduling. I know, so boring, so practical, but putting it in your calendar, like, okay, I'm gonna spend an hour this week just doing reels, and then kind of schedule that out for later.
Do you know what I find though? And maybe it's a subconscious thing of why it never happens. I feel like anytime that I would have remembered, I always felt a bit silly.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'm on this job site now. I'm just gonna take my phone and do a little video.
Yeah.
And like talk.
Yeah.
And record a reel or just a post or something, and then post it. I'm always kind of like, maybe later.
Yeah, it's a generational thing, I think.
Yeah, thanks.
Like our generation is a little bit no, even me, like that. And I'm only a little bit younger than you, but I mean, you look at young kids nowadays, and they do that all the time without even thinking about it. It's so second nature to them.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of video ads that we run for ourselves on Facebook and Instagram. I live in a cul-de-sac, like in a very busy neighborhood. And literally last Friday, I had my ring light set up outside just for the tripod part of it, but I have this giant contraption and I'm filming video. There's people driving by. A little girl goes by on her bike and she's like staring at me, and yeah, you feel like an idiot. But I'm like, this is how it gets done.
Yeah.
This is it. You gotta
feel
get
like
over that, right?
You feel like an influencer, you know? And nobody
Yeah.
wants to be really, unless you're like leaning into that hardcore and you're like, I'm an influencer.
Yeah.
Nobody else wants to be branded as an influencer.
Well, yeah, I feel kind of, that's the thing. I feel like people are gonna be like, what's he trying to do?
Yeah.
Make money off Instagram or something? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean,
It's just awkward.
like, as Krystal can attest to, she helps people make tons of money off of Facebook and Instagram. So, I mean, it's still, we've seen as media transitioned over the last 2 decades, cable TV is dying. There's a reason you can't get internet without getting cable TV. It's because they need to keep their sponsors. And all of that attention, all those eyeballs are now on YouTube and the social media platforms. So that's where the money is. We need to get over this fear of being an influencer feeling and really market that way.
One thing I found about specifically being in New York City, because we spent 3 months there, people just don't care there. It's amazing because there's so many people. You're so anonymous. Everybody is just wildly themselves, I think. Like, I've seen people like screaming down the street. I've seen wild outfits. I've seen influencers in Central Park, just like, you know, fur coat and the full thing with this like beautiful picnic. But it like really taught me like nobody gives a shit about what I'm doing. Like,
Yeah.
it's really just all in your head.
Yeah.
And yeah, sometimes
That's a Newfoundland stigma. Like, maybe it's because, I don't know, small town Newfoundland, if you don't know what you're doing, somebody else does.
yeah.
Everybody knows your
sure.
business.
Yes.
And everybody wants to talk to the next person. But when you go to a place with millions of people in one city, they see it all. It's just background noise now. They don't even care. So I think maybe it's a bit of a culture thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, but great segue into where I want to go next with this, because Krystal has done what I think is the impossible. After about a decade plus now into your business, you somehow, which I have no idea how you did it, but I want to hear more about it, managed to step away from your business in some capacity for approximately a year and still had a business to kind of come back to. I don't know if you stepped away fully, if there was touch points, maybe there was. I don't know the capacity of which you did it. But the fact that you did it at all, it blows my mind. And I would love to hear more about how you accomplished, how you got your business to a point where it was able to pretty much run itself,
Yeah.
and you were able to step away for a longer period of time to go and just enjoy a little bit of life.
Yeah. So I think in a lot of ways, all the stars aligned for this to happen.
Yeah. But you
But-
planned this for a long time, though.
Yeah. So Brandon, my husband, and I always talked about taking a year off to travel. And then when COVID hit and it was like, you can't travel and we have all this time and we're just kind of sitting around, we were like, okay, if we actually want to do this, we need to make a plan. So with Brandon's work, he's able to do, it's like a deferred salary program. So he took a third of his salary for 2 years, and then the third year he gets off, but he gets paid the last third, basically. So he applied for that program, which gave us a timeline. Okay, we've got I don't know if it was 2 or 3 years to be able to, I think it was 3. We have 3 years to be able to plan for this and get things to a place where I can leave too.
Right.
So on the personal side of things, we saved heavily. So we had automatic withdrawals coming out of our bank accounts and going into a fund we couldn't touch so that we would have the goal money that we wanted to be able to take the time and travel.
Very smart.
So we got married in August. In September, we went to New York and we were there until like the first week of December.
So you kicked this off with a honeymoon.
Yeah.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Really cool.
And that was, COVID delayed the wedding. So it all just kind of wrapped up into one big thing. So yeah, we got married in August. September through December, we were in New York City, which was a big dream of Brandon's. And being from a small place, I love big cities because it's the polar opposite and it's
Absolutely.
exciting.
Yes.
Then we came home for a couple of months, and then we did Europe for 3 months, and now we're back here.
So when you went to these places, did you, and I'm getting a little sidetracked, I'm assuming you didn't stay in hotels these times, Airbnbs or?
Yeah, so we did Airbnbs. For New York, we stayed in the same place for 3 months. And then everywhere in Europe, we did a month per country, and we stayed in a place for a month at each one. So,
but that is amazing because you're there long enough to really get a feel for the place that you're in.
Yeah.
To really get an appreciation, to get some sort of routine down. And I almost feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, because I've never done this, I wish, but a sense that you live there.
Absolutely. And I'm like,
what was your favorite? Where are you moving?
yeah, I guess, well, obviously we are in a place of privilege in that, you know, I'm running a stable, successful business. Brandon has a good job that enables us to do this. We have all those things in our favor, and we saved and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So while it's not possible for everyone, I think it's more possible than people think.
Right.
And it's just a dream that they never really make into a goal. And I hope that more people, you know, seeing what we've been able to do will do that for themselves as well, because it's an incredible experience.
I think so what you're saying is you just planned relentlessly. You planned, you put a savings plan in place. You had this thing planned out from 2 years in advance.
Yeah.
You said Brandon's job, what a great program, by the way.
Yeah.
To be able to do that for their employees, to say, okay, you know, take this and we'll put this away and then we'll pay that out in the third year. That's really interesting. But yeah, it was all just about planning. And you gave yourself a deadline, so it had to happen.
Yeah, and I think because I knew that I would be taking off significant time, I was very strategic in how I set the business up to prepare for that. So I started being super hardcore about SOPs. So everything was documented, everything had a process and a procedure written out, a video to go with it. That was a big part of it. And then it was also looking at what are the hats that I wear that tie me to the day-to-day, and how do I start handing those off?
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big part of the puzzle. So I think one of the key roles that I certainly had some hiccups with was someone who's client-facing.
Mm-hmm.
So getting somebody in that position, because that would take up the most of my time, is meeting with our clients, making sure they're taken care of, we're doing everything we need to. Administrative, so that was one of the hats that I had wanted to take off as well. Sales, that was the one I did not take off at all, and that is definitely a lesson for me, because if you don't have constant leads and new opportunities coming in, you are slowly shrinking and dying. Mm-hmm. And that is a very scary place to be in when you're not at home and you're traveling and you're trying to enjoy this once in a lifetime experience. If you don't have that figured out, like, you will shrink and it will be scary.
Okay, so I was thinking, and Michael knows this is my favorite type of business model. I was thinking that your business model was more of a recurring revenue model. Yes. Whereas I consider my business model to be the opposite. It's awful.
Yeah.
It's so bad. It's so frustrating. I constantly have to be in sales. I constantly have to get the next job, the next lead, and keep things going. And I had tried to step away from that twice.
Yeah.
And didn't work out really either time. And now I'm almost afraid to let that go because it failed twice and I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And someone once said to me that I was the magic sauce in the business. And I'm like, you take that out.
But here's the thing, like Krystal said, you got to figure out what hats you wear. And then maybe getting one person to wear all those hats is not the solution for you. Maybe you need 3 people to do what you do in the run of a day.
And then trying to afford those 3 people. There's all these barriers I'm putting up to it. But they are real challenges to come by. So this is why I was so interested in hearing about it, because I just couldn't. I've thought about doing this,
Yeah.
or something in some sort of capacity, and I really struggle with it.
Yeah.
And how to do it. And I'm sure there's other entrepreneurs and business owners out there that feel the same.
So now that you're back and you have taken those tasks and temporarily delegated them, what did you take those tasks back, or now are you doubling down on new things to grow the business in other ways?
She's like, no, it's just
Like-
it's just running itself now.
How real do we want to get here?
Real.
So I think having done this, there are definitely things I would do differently. Like I mentioned, I think because I knew I had this coming up, I got really focused on operations and less focused on business development, which worked to a certain degree because then I've got all these processes for the team to follow, but I think I shifted too much that way. And even though we have really high retention at Reflective, it's just a fact that clients churn. Like, clients are going to leave. And if you're not consistently bringing in new ones every single month, then you will slowly shrink.
Yeah.
So what has happened is that we have shrunk over that time. Now, again, planned for it really well, had savings, had a plan in place. But yeah, it definitely had a negative impact on the business.
Oh, thank God. She's human. I was starting to question it.
Yeah. And I mean, the way I look at it too, I'm like, if you have a baby, if something other major life event happens, like this same thing is going to occur. And I'm looking at it now as like, everything is almost like a trial for retirement or for some major life thing. And if I don't figure out how to pull myself away from the day to day, unless that's what you want, but for me, it's not. Like, I am most excited about growing the business and like tinkering. I'm like, I love tinkering. Like, let me just tinker all day and not have to do things that are super, super essential to the day to day. So for me, it's, I really learned that I can never drop the ball on business development. So specifically, stop doing the podcast, stop being super consistent on content, wasn't driving sales as hard as I normally would. And that took a long time to catch up to me, but it did. And when I do this again in 3 years, which I'm going to do.
Right back to the 3-year cycle.
Right back.
Nice.
It's a business system.
2 years work, 1 year hiatus.
Yeah.
It's a good system.
Yeah, now I know that that's something that I have to keep going all the time, even if I'm happy with where the business is. If I let that drop, it will eventually catch up to me.
And that brings me to, I think, an important question. Are all your clients currently local clients, and are you expanding into other provinces? Because when you go to New York, instead of that just being pure vacation, that could be content creation and meeting with international clients.
Yeah, so our clients are across Canada and in the US as well. So we're not purely local. While we do have a great local base, we'll work with anybody in Canada or the US. So yeah, that definitely makes it easier. And I think I really, in some ways, I hid a lot about my year off because I was afraid of the perception of it.
I get that.
I think it's great, though. I think
Nobody
any
cares.
entrepreneur
Nobody
wants to
cares.
do that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's their goal. Everybody nowadays wants to travel more and incorporate a good work-life balance.
But I feel like I know where Krystal's coming with this. If your clients found out that the what's the word I'm looking for? Like the key element of the business,
Secret sauce.
the secret sauce. Thank you. It's not there anymore,
Yeah.
and it's coming back, and it's a greatly trained team. I feel that I would have done the same. I would have tried to give the perception that I was still there.
Yeah.
To keep the confidence
But
of the clients.
here's the thing. Everybody has to take time for themselves. Everybody has to vacation for mental health. and Krystal planned for this. So, if her clients didn't notice anything while she was gone,
Yeah.
more power to her.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it was really in the latter half that I was like, okay, like now I can relax, like everything's fine.
Yeah, still
And in
going.
some ways, I think that I contributed more to those clients because I wasn't bogged down in all the day-to-day stuff. I could hop in and be like, hey, wasn't this quite working the way we thought it would? Or
Yeah.
it allowed me to
So
be
you didn't
more
fully
strategic.
tap out. You're still there,
No.
still checking in, still kind of like watching.
Yeah, so originally my goal, was 5 hours a week. And then it was like, okay, I'll keep it to 15.
That's
I think-
That's a multiplier of 3 there.
Yeah. It kind of ebbed and flowed depending on what was going on. Like when we were in New York, I worked way more than I wanted to. I'd say I was probably like 30-ish hours. When the second half, when we were in Europe, it was definitely closer to like 20.
That really goes with the cultural vibe.
Yes,
though.
I was gonna say that.
when
You're
when
just
in New
in the
York or when in
culture.
Rome,
Yeah.
kind of do.
Yeah. New York's all about the hustle, and then Europe is kind of
So
like
true.
the lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, that was definitely it.
I just came back from a trip to New York, and just me and my daughter went, and we really got to have a little special taste of everything. I've been to New York 3 times now, and I love it too.
Yeah.
I love one thing that I really love about it is from a media perspective, how they romanticize their city. So they embed movies and culture into everything that they do. One example being the movie Serendipity. That's an actual cafe called Serendipity, and they based a whole special movie around that individual spot. And now people go to New York and they want to sit in Serendipity and they want to meet somebody that they fall in love with. And then they go skating in Central Park, and it's just beautiful. And I don't know why we're not doing that here. And that's something that I want to do with Mainstream, is start romanticizing some of these locations.
I think population has a lot to do with this. We don't have the masses the same.
Maybe, but we can still romanticize some of our favorite places. Who says you can't take a camera and go into a coffee shop and just look at a cup of coffee and make it beautiful? And,
Yeah.
so many people get joy out of that. But yeah, I love New York. So what was your trip in Europe like? More chill, 20 hours a week, you said?
Yeah, Europe was definitely more chill. A lot of that was when I was in New York City, it kind of coincided with the off season for our clients, which meant their business, a lot of them, like kind of nosedive for a short period of time. So they were all freaking out. And then I had a client-facing role leave. So that meant that hat was going back on for that period. So that's why I had to work a lot more during that time. With Europe, I had gotten somebody into that role that was doing really well. I was definitely a lot more prepared at that time. And I learned what really worked for me. So I needed to have structure to my day. I needed to have a separate place to work.
Co-working spaces.
Yeah, I went to a lot of co-working spaces.
Really cool.
But yeah, as much as routine, bores me, I need it. And I think in New York at times, I definitely let that go by the wayside. And that was detrimental to my productivity and mental health.
Yeah.
So I had really figured out some boundaries and some ways to work that workked a lot better for me.
In 2 years from now, you're gonna be a pro. You're gonna have so much
better
figured
be.
out. You're like, or else I'm done.
But honestly, I find I'm now the longer I am somewhere, the better. I really enjoyed spending a full 3 months in New York because I got a co-working membership, I got a gym membership, I had a grocery store, we made friends. You could really live versus, spending a month in Spain. Our in-laws came, we had some friends visiting, and it's really hard to maintain balance and normalcy and work life when it feels more like a vacation.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You stayed somewhere long enough. You got to feel like you lived there. And
Yeah.
3 months sounds like it's the sweet spot to really get in, work at the routine, really kind of settle in and feel like you never want to come home.
Yes. Yeah.
So, Krystal, we have a recurring segment on this show where we ask our guests to provide an actionable takeaway for our viewers. So, something that you do that you can suggest to them. But I'm actually going to really niche your question because
please.
I feel like you've got a great experience there. For an entrepreneur now who wants to step away from their business, is there a few things that you can think of that they should do in order to take those 3 months or that year or that prolonged time away? What would you suggest that they do?
The first thing to do is to really analyze what hats you wear and where your time goes. If you step away, what things are going to crumble first? Mm-hmm. And when you identify those things, now you need to start building processes. So taking, all these common tasks, what are the things that you're doing every day that you can record that process and document it. And maybe you don't actually write everything out, but you record it. It spits out a transcript. There are all types of tools that can do that for you. But having those processes will really build a lot of freedom for you to be able to take off that hat and put somebody else into that role.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel that the nature of your company, being able to work from anywhere, helped in being able to step away? Because, you kept working. You have clients, you just told us, across Canada, the United States, and elsewhere. So you can provide your service. Mm-hmm. Your company can provide the service that it offers remotely, just from anywhere. So even though you stepped away when you had to, you could be just as involved back into the company.
Yes.
So you're not geographically tied to one spot.
It's true.
Which I think helped a lot.
Mm-hmm.
In my defense, and why I haven't done this yet.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too is if you never have to, then you won't learn how to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just flip that right back around. I got it. Yeah,
that's true. Sometimes maybe a good step for you would be to do the things that Krystal suggested, but also don't do it for 3 months. Do it for a week. You did do that, actually. Did you do that like last year or the year before? You took I think 2 weeks off, which was the most I think he's ever taken off.
I just take off the holidays. I take off Christmas.
Yeah.
It's just easier because nobody wants you in their house during Christmas. We do primarily residential, so I find it a good... Anyway, it's not about me, it's about Krystal.
True.
But I think that's it. I don't know if I actually ran out of questions or if I'm just happy with how much information and how much you've shared with us today. So I think we're good, unless you want to add something.
No, this was actually a lot of fun. So
She's so surprised. Why are our guests always surprised? You're like, this is actually
this
really
wasn't
fun.
painful.
I can't believe I thought this was going to be awful.
Yeah. Actually, I'd love to have a chat with you more. We don't have to prolong this, but I feel like there's a few gold nuggets that I'd like to speak with you about. Maybe we'll just grab a coffee and we'll chat about it.
Yeah.
And we'll certainly love to have you back for our second season. So this is episode 9, and so episode 10, and then we're going to roll into season 2. So anything cool that you have coming up that you want to announce, and that'll probably be within the next couple months. We'd love to have you back again.
Okay. Well, thank you guys. Again, I'm normally in the interviewer seat, so I was a little nervous, but I'm real happy to be here.
Wait, we forgot something, of course. Do you want to tell our audience how they can find you, how they can find your company, your website, your Instagram, and your podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find us at reflectivemarketing.com, at Reflective Marketing on Facebook, Instagram. Instagram's probably where I spend the most time. And otherwise, our podcast, Beyond the Tools, is available on every major podcast platform.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Thank you, Krystal.
Good job. Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for coming in.